Hey guys, Shane here. Welcome to the first build of 2017 on the channel, and I hope you all had a lovely Christmas and a happy new year. So in this video, which will be the final installment for the metaphorical Ardennes week, as it's gone well over a week at this point, we'll be creating a scene from the ambush at Poteo, which is when elements of the 14 Cav group got surrounded and destroyed by elements of Camp Group Hansen. So it is a very simple little diorama piece, and this technique can be used for all scales and sizes of diorama bases. So here are the base components all laid out that you will need to create this scene. I've already done and completed and weathered the Willys Jeep. However, I will be doing a full build video on a subject very similar to this in the future. So the base is made out of blue foam. I've taken several sheets and glued it together with non-adhesive glues. Then I've taken a box cutter and I've just shaped a basic shape, or a slope if you will, into the foam. And then I've drilled a hole for the locating pin for our figure, as you can see here. And then what I'll do is, before we add our mud mixture, I will place a small cocktail stick to ensure that that locating hole does not get filled in. So the Willys Jeep is from Tamiya, which is a lovely little kit. Came out many years ago, it's almost 20 years old now, and it holds up very well. I built this directly out of the box. I've done no modification to it whatsoever, with the exception of cutting off the MG, or should I say the M1919 30 cal machine gun, and just repositioned it just to make it look a bit more natural. And other than that, it's built out of the box. How I weathered this model, there's a full video on my channel, a link to that on your top right. And in a later video I will show you how I do olive drab vehicles, or at least my artistic interpretation of one. The main component for this diorama base will be Scenic Mud by Scenic Factory. This is a light bodied wet style mud. It is very natural, has got a satin quality to it and also has fibres. So this can be applied directly out of the pot, and as you will see, it's very easy and convincing to use. Also, to add a little bit of interest and texture to our base, we're going to be also applying some universal autumn or fall leaf fall, which again is from Scenic Factory. For tools, we don't actually need too many tools, just an artist's trowel, an old stiff bristled brush that you don't mind sacrificing. Also, I have a piece of foam and a scissors, which I will not be using. I thought I might need the foam for adding texture to the mud mixture, but alas, I did not need it. So to apply this pre-mixed mud texture, it's very simple. You just apply directly out of the pot and begin to apply it in sections. I find it's better to do in sections and just try to cover the entire base at once. I would recommend, however, that you score the surface that you're applying the mud mixture onto, just to ensure that it has a surface to adhere to. I didn't score mine deep enough, and it just took me a little while to work it into the blue foam. However, it did take to it. You'll also see that I apply it in a bit of a stippling motion, just to encourage the mud mixture to adhere to the base. Then I'll just take small amounts of mud, apply it onto the base just using my artist spatula, and just do sections at a time. Also, the stippling motion not only helps it to stick to the base, but it also gives it a bit of a texture. This is a very slow drying product, so it won't dry particularly quick, so you do have time to work with it. And especially in climates like mine in Ireland, where we have high humidity, especially during winter, the drying time is immensely slow, which is very good for jobs like this. little bit of patience, you can see how the mud texture begins to take shape, and it's very convincing, especially with all these small amounts of fibres that give the mud that very organic feel and look. It almost looks like there's grass roots and what have you mixed into it. When I'm coming to the edges and where the foam meets the cardboard and plastic card blanking edges, I'll apply a little bit heavy just to ensure that there's no gap and no visible seam. I want this to be as seamless as possible, so you'll see me paying special attention to the edges of the base to make sure that there's no blank areas left. Patience is your best weapon here. This is a very simple base technique, and it's very easy for even beginners, intermediates or advanced. It's a very universal and very flexible way and can be very easily accomplished as long as you take your time. If you rush through this can become very unwieldy and messy very quickly. However, with a small amount of patience, the effect is very, very convincing. You will see me at times sometimes tap the mud mixture with my finger as I apply it from the trowel or spatula, and that's just to help it bed it down and ensure that it adheres to the base surface. Also, by just merely stippling it with the brush will do exactly the same as well. And once again, when we're working near the bases, make sure that you pay enough special attention to make sure that there's no gaps between the edges of the base and the mud, or it will look very unconvincing. However, if you do miss anything, you can always go back and reapply some more to hide the cracks. This does not shrink either, so it's a very good product in that sense. It should not crack or shrink on you. And if I do get any of the mud mixture onto the sides of the base, which I painted black, I just wipe it away before it can dry. Simple as that. Alternatively, you could easily mask it with some masking tape if you wish. I didn't really bother in this. It's really up to you how you want to do it. Both ways can be equally valid. Also, I use a lot of Vallejo products, and I didn't seal this with some varnish, so if I put down mask, I could lift the paint accidentally, so I just decided not to, and I would just remove it if I get it over the edges, which I do in places. So after a few minutes, you're left with this, a very muddy looking field. So now that it's still wet, though it's been given maybe 30 minutes to kind of set, we're going to push our Jeep into the mud just so I can get an idea where it's going to sit and make sure that all the wheels are actually sitting and sunk into the mud for a very realistic end finish. And wherever I get the wheel imprints, I'm going to take an old wheel from my spare bits box, and any of the places where I see the impressions of the wheel, of the Jeep's wheels, I'm going to trace them with this spare wheel here, just to give me some imprints into the mud, just for an extra bit of detail. I've put a small amount of water onto this wheel just to stop the clay from setting on it. Now, I would have been probably a bit better off to make a proper jig and rolling it properly into the mud. However, it worked fine, and it's just there to give me the impression that the Jeep has rolled down this ditch as it tried to flee from the ambush. However, it's very important that you do all these fine detail work while the mixture is still wet, or the subjects will sit above the mud and will look very unconvincing. I'm also going to put maybe a few tyre tracks on the top of where the road is meant to be, just to give it a bit of interest. Now I'm going to sit the Jeep back down. You could lock it down with a little bit of white glue if you wished. I'm just going to push it down into the mud and see if it will stay there, which it should if it sank correctly into it. But if not, you can also just lock it down with a small amount of white PVA glue. I'm just inspecting to make sure all the wheels are sitting flush with the base and that they've sank a few millimeters into the mud to get the impression of weight. And due to the slow drying time of this type of mud plaster mixture, or whatever it's made out of, it gives you a lot of time to work with it. Any places where I feel there's a bit of a gap or doesn't look right, I'm just going to apply a small bit of mud against the wheels just to help blend them in a bit better. I'm just going to tap it down with my finger and lock it all in place. Also, to add some visual interest and a bit of different colour and texture, I'm going to start adding some of the leaf fall or the leaf scatter. I'm only going to sprinkle a small amount of this onto the base. I don't want it to be overpowering, but just enough to add a little bit of visual interest. Less sometimes is very much more when it comes to scale modelling, so only add a small amount, and it's just enough to draw the eye of a viewer into your piece. As simple as that. And it's a very attractive product. This actually, I will be using this leaf litter quite a bit in future products. I quite like the look of it. Now I'm going to add our figure while our mud mixture is still wet, and I'm going to push him down into the mud to ensure that he's sitting in the mud, and then we're going to blend him in once he's set in place. To ensure that our leaves actually adhere to the mud, I'm actually just going to take a cocktail stick and very gently push them into the mud. I'm not trying to sink them into the mud, I'm just tapping them in just so it binds with the mud mixture. And once that's done, I'm going to take a pair of an old figure and use its legs and push them into the mud to give the impression of footprints from other troops walking up and down the road. Now, you won't see them too well on my base because I didn't make the mud mixture deep enough. However, if you make the mud mixture at least 2 or 3 mil deep and then push some boots into it, you'll get some very realistic and very convincing footprints. Now to blend our figure into the base, I'm just going to take an old brush and take some of our mud mixture directly out of the pot, and I'm just going to blend in his shoes and the base of his pants just so they're both from the same environment. And I also did the same to the wheels of the Willys Jeep as well to ensure that the mud suits both. And with that, our very simple ambush appareil is completed. I really hope you found this tutorial interesting and give you some ideas for projects of your own. I've been Shane, thank you so much. I wish you all a wonderful 2017 and may we have plenty of model making adventures together. Thanks for watching guys, stay safe as always, happy modelling and watch out for those buses. Bye bye.